When did you first grow curious about the paranormal? Dare you dig deeper? You are listening to House of Asher.
Hey, how's everybody doing? This is your host, Steve Asher, for the House of Asher. I don't know what that thing was. Hey, it's like I'm gonna play some soft jazz tonight. We're gonna groove with some Luther Vandross or something. But anyway, here we are. This is the House of Asher show. You may be listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, SoundCloud, Spreaker. You may also be watching this on the Facebook page, House of Asher, and if so, please, if you are so inclined, like, share, subscribe, make it your weekly thing. You know, we'll laugh, we'll cry. It'll be a beautiful thing. Also, I do need to say, globally, I'm very much indebted to Paranormal UK Radio. That is who carries me globally, all the way from the highest peaks of the Alps to the bottom of the pole, top of the pole, and all around it, you know. And so I'm very, very, very blessed to be in cahoots, if that's a proper way of saying that. It sounds kind of nefarious, but whatever works, with these fine folks at Paranormal UK Radio. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is a sort of thing that interests me, that my friends say, okay, if you come to the party, please don't talk about blankety blankety blank. And inevitably I'm going to go, so who's your favorite serial killer? You know, did you know that, you know, you can actually get away with, you know, like a murder if you, some people say you can freeze it. Now some people say you want to freeze dry it. Well, some people say you want to inject a certain type of, you know, whatever chemical in, the waters part, and I'm the weird kid by the punch bowl. But that's okay, because there are other people who probably aren't as weird as me, but they definitely have a love and an interest and have driven themselves to become authorities on this sort of thing, and that is the guest that we're going to have tonight, and I'm going to do her bio quickly. Clarissa Cole is a doctor of forensic psychology. She has over 15 years of experience with criminals of all stripes, sex offenders, killers, and gang members. She began her career in a state hospital for the criminally insane, moved on to the prisons, and currently supervises risk assessment across the state. Her goal is to understand the criminal mind in an effort not only to fathom why criminals do what they do, but also to create change by offering help to those society deems to be beyond assistance. Sometimes it is through therapy with the perpetrator, while at other times it is through offering insight to the victims, the families, and to the public. Now, you may know her from, like, the Criminal Code. You may also know her from the film Trouble with Cause. That was done in 2018. We're going to get into all that and so much more. Welcome to the show, Miss Clarissa Cole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
It's extremely cool, you know, because I've, you know, followed your work along, obviously through, you know, other radio programs and things like that, and your appearances on different movie, television related stuff, because you're kind of, you know, I use like terminology for my guy friends, for my girlfriends, or whoever. You're like the dude. You're the dude. They know that you will come to the table with something.
Thank you.
That is your official title, the dude. And I don't give it the dude to everybody, but you know what you're doing, and it's always an entertaining time when somebody gets to have you on the show, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. It's awesome. I'm glad that you are one of those people that goes to parties and brings up awkward topics, because I would have someone to talk to.
You know, it's sort of like a kid, and I think you'll find, well, I don't know. I think you have closet kind of weirdos and closet, you know, people, curiosity on the, you know, murderous tip and the dark side of humanity. I'm kind of a dualist. You know, I think it's always there. I don't think necessarily that it takes, you know, oh, he's a bad seed or he's whatever, you know, he's got some screw loose and stuff. I think just sometimes it takes just the right push it'll be it orchestrated or not,
Hmm.
for someone just to go, I think today is the day I start chopping mother up. Today is the day that I'm going to make a lovely, set of window curtains out of my Uncle Jimmy. And so they do.
Hmm.
You know, what do you feel like if, of your fan base? What do you find most? Is it more? And I do find this is true. I feel that generally women are really, really down with sort of the. Well, I mean, look, good Lord, look at Lifetime. Look at some of those other channels. Um,
Hmm.
there's a lot of revenge against the babysitter or revenge against some evil boss. Like 9 to 5 meets Hannibal Lecter. That really drives that. Which I mean, I don't know what it says about me. I love it too. Um, but it's a thing. I think everybody has that curiosity of the dark, the forbidden fruit, the call it what you will. Um, what is the overwhelming fan base that you found? Is there a type? Is there like a demographic that if somebody was trying to market to, what would they use?
Oh gosh, I do think that women are the primary sort of targets for the fan base. But the reason I think that is, and actually studies have been done. See, you're gonna learn this about me. So it's annoying, but I keep up on a lot of psych studies, and there have been studies on people that are fans of true crime and why are they women. And one of the biggest reasons that women are fans of true crime is because most violent crime happens to women.
I can see that.
Women are by far and away, I mean, what is it? Like at least, at least 70% of the victims of all violent crime are women. So we want to know about it. We want to know what drives it. And I think it makes us feel better somehow to understand it a little,
Well, do you
you
think
know?
it's? Well, I was going to say, do you feel it's
It
sort
is
of a?
sad, but I think that that's part of it.
Well, is it sort of a taking back the night, as it were? I always heard, and as we'd mentioned off air, I had been in law enforcement, and my father had actually been worked at the Kentucky State Penitentiary as I did years ago, and went on to become a beat cop in the 50s and 60s, and more or less, I'm trying to think, what's the Untouchables thing? Like they put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of them in the morgue. You want to find the biggest guy and mess him
Hmm.
up, and there's a thing of if you do it enough,
Hmm.
they'll leave you alone. But there's it's overkill. I mean, pardon the pun, but it definitely it's not. You're not going to stab someone 127 times, or beat them to their face. Looks like hamburger helper or something like that, just because you want to get away from them. You want to destroy them. Sometimes you want to consume them. There's a lot of strange steps people take one way or the other that I wonder. It has to not be for in the idea of forethought. It had to have been something primal in them, maybe. I don't know if it's cultural. Do you find like certain cultures have more of a tendency toward consuming the victim?
Consuming it, I not really. I mean, it does kind of span most demographics. I mean, and but it is primarily the gender, I think, is women, and I think there's two reasons for it. I think one is kind of what you're saying, sort of this revenge or wanting to sort of master how they think about certain people. They want to hear sort of the revenge stories or where the victim comes out on top. And then I think that is another subset of women who I think they think the more they know about it, the less chance there is of them being a victim of it. And to a certain extent, they are actually correct. The more
Well,
you know about certain crimes and what drives them and how to act in those situations, the less likely you are to be a victim. That part is somewhat true.
well, let me ask you
So,
this then. Kind of following that line, I feel like I'm like that's all fine and good, you know, Mrs. Cole. But let me ask you this. I feel like you're on the hot seat with the increasing changes in culture going, where, the concept of Mad Men and stuff is extremely archaic to most people,
mhm.
even here in the South, we're slow to warm up this stuff, but it's coming, it's coming. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you come through, I'm going to hold the door for you. And if you say I don't like that, I won't again. But that's my nature. And, there it is. But do you find that with the empowerment of women, do you feel that this will decrease some of the behavior of future type of female serial killers, or do you think that will just maybe empower certain personalities even more so to act out in violent ways?
I think I do think it will decrease it. I think violence against women will decrease. I mean, maybe violence of women toward men might increase, but when you're looking at like a female serial killer like Eileen Burness, you're looking at such a small percentage of overall serial killers. When you look at female sex offenders, again, you're looking at, I mean, of all pedophiles, only 1% of them are women. So, if those numbers go up, even if they went up tenfold, we would still be nowhere near the amount of violence that is perpetrated by men. So am I concerned about it? No. I think the more that women speak up and the more that, kind of goes on, the better off they are, because victims, by and large, when perpetrators are looking for a victim, they're looking for a victim that doesn't talk, that
Right.
won't say things. So
Right. And,
I think
and
it's healthy.
well, and sometimes, oh no, I totally think that's healthy. I was just saying, it does seem like it's the marginalized. It's like, well, I'm a trucker. I'm going to go kidnap, the policeman, the mayor, the whatever, the governor's daughter. No, you're going to get a hitchhiker. You're going to get some disenfranchised kid,
Yes.
probably small, probably, they'll have to have eaten in a few days. Susceptible. Here, Jack the Ripper type of deal. Here, would you like some grapes? We'll hang out. It'll be a good time. Not so much. And it definitely does seem like that's sort of the trope of the serial killer.
It's a trope for a reason. You're right. You're 100% right. I mean, it's a trope because it's true. I mean, the typical serial killer picks people that they feel will not be missed quickly.
And it seems like that's the reason that it becomes serial killing, because people don't notice it.
Right.
Dahmer, living in more of an urban, and let's just say it was pretty much an all-black neighborhood. The cops weren't going there.
No, and they aren't suspecting Dahmer if they are, because they're going after more people of color. And a weird fact about me, Jeffrey Dahmer actually lived in a building that my parents, my father was dating somebody that lived in that building, same building, before Dahmer. I'm from Wisconsin, so.
No, that's all good. See, that's the weird kind of, I don't want to say happenstance. I'm a little bit more about synchronicity. And I will tell you this real quick, and we can get into something else. Being from Kentucky, because you asked me about serial killers and people like this, there's a cat by the name of, and you'll notice I'll talk like a 70s pimp from sometimes, because I grew up on a lot of 70s shows and stuff. There was this cat, and by the name of Roderick Farrell, and he was the vampire killer in a group of kids here in Murray, Kentucky, not 30 miles from me. We're all part of this kind of witch or vampire coven, and he told him, "Yeah, I'm a 400-year-old witch, and my name is da da da." And he was dating this girl a few years younger than her. He was actually like, I don't know, I think at the time 17 or 18. This girl was like 15 or 16. Again, that's sort of a southern thing too. Anyway, the little girl was complaining about her grandparents and saying, or her parents rather, and saying, my grandparents are loaded, and we go down there. And anyway, they decided to go down there, and I think they're going to rob them. And then it sort of was like, well, I mean, this is good. All this money still in the car. This is thoroughly good, but we think they're going to figure it out. You knew the code to get into the house. They're going to know somebody did it. Maybe we should just bludgeon them to death. Just a little bludgy bludge. Yeah. Right? And that's what happened. And, some of the kids got off. It was so messed up because, like I said, when I say I knew him, I'm doing this air quotes. My wife was like a manager of a restaurant here in town in Princeton, and so we had to go down there and get some supplies, like trade out, like, hey, I'll get some quarter pounder patties and we'll give you blah blah blah. Anyway, that's just how they networked. Anyway, that's not important. So we come in the far corner of the restaurant, we see it looked kind of like a Cure reunion or something. All these kids in dark hair, and they're covered in dark hair. They're big feet. They were dark clothing and kind of very gothy looking hair and makeup, probably,
Wow.
loved like a lot of the Dark Horse comics and all that. So anyway, went past these cats, went in there, got the stuff. Apparently there was a straggler coming at the last moment. My hands are pretty full. The wife's completely covered up. I'm trying to get the door open. This guy kind of opens the door, goes in between us, almost hitting us, walks on through, lets the door close. And so I'm trying to catch it with my foot. Well, I let her out, which it kind of peed me off because it was a little rude. So I looked back at the guys, the new kid sitting there scowling at me, and I went, "Have a good night, Dracula." And I walked out because I'm a zippy idiot, and I didn't realize that I was talking to a future serial killer. So I did, and then you read a few months later, local teen, connected with theft and possible homicide in Florida. That's how you have to read those.
Wow.
That's how I read them.
Yeah.
That old timey stuff. But
Yep.
it was just that close, and you always hear that expression. Well, you pass, like in a big city, you might pass 10 killers in a day, or 1 or 2 serial killers. I don't know the math, I bet, but that's sobering. But it seems like people have sort of social amnesia and just keep going.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like when you're talking about just, I guess, regular, everyday sort of murderers, the numbers go much further up from there. I mean, serial killing is, I think there's only 2,500 serial killers worldwide that we know of. Although 60% of them are from the United States, so we have a higher percentage of running into them here than we do anywhere else.
USA.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: how many are? And I'm not trying to make it divisive, but I want to look at the pie chart. You said most are male. How many are
Yes.
white, and how many are white from affluent backgrounds?
That's what's interesting. More of them are white. I think although not staggeringly more are white. I want to say that the number's also in the 60 percentile range for white serial killers. The rest are African American, Hispanic. I mean, Asian barely factors. There's only a few from America anyway. And not from affluent backgrounds, generally speaking. No, it's pretty rare for them to be from wealth, but it's also rare for them to be from really poor too.
Right.
It's kind of that that middle ground.
That invisible middle class.
Yes.
The ever shrinking middle class. Well, I'll tell you this, and please take it as a joke. The children that we have adopted, most of their family is either Thai or Asian. They have no time to go out killing people. They work 7 days a week, freaking 14, 15 hours a day. They go home. The only thing they're killing is their pillow with their head. They're done. They're very, very, very good people. But yeah, I'd say that surprised me because, you see stuff like American Psycho and things like that. And you kind of get this thing, this guy, he thinks he's untouchable. He's above, reproach. He is God and all this stuff, which made for a good film. Or what was your opinion on stuff like that in psychos in modern, films and things like that in series, like Dexter? What?
Yeah, I generally don't like film because they really do not portray it accurately. Although I would say that of all the films that are out there, I think American Psycho comes closest to what a psychopath actually is. I really do. I never say that, but that is the one film that I'm like, that is a psychopath, and it's an excellent portrayal of a psychopath, for sure. I mean, I'm not talking about the killing part per se. I'm talking about his personality. His personality of Patrick Bates, or what is it? Yeah, whatever his last name is, I can't remember. In that movie, he portrays somebody that is just unbelievably narcissistic, very sure of himself, and then very insecure at the same time. Very jealous, very petty.
Reptilian, almost, yes. Working on the lizard brain extremely hard.
Yeah. Oh, and I've always said that too. Like I've only met a handful of really true psychopaths that are very high on the psychopathy scale, and it does make the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you are in their presence, when you know what you're looking at, I should say. Other people might like them a lot, but...
and they do.
Yep.
That thing that you feel is, again, law enforcement. I call that your gut. You can call it intuition, whatever. It's a knowing. It's sometimes I can't even explain what it is. I've been in situations, I'm sure you have too, where your insight is, get the hell out of here, man. What are you doing in here? This is death. You're sticking your face into a whirling death machine. And that's honestly how it feels when you're in the presence of something really dark. I don't like saying evil. I know there are definitely things that I would consider evil. People that molest children and kill children and things like that. Not that I rank anybody else as high as children, but that's where my heart's at. But generally, I think it's situational, either madness. I don't know if it's nature or nurture, but yeah, that is right on when you say the hair on your neck goes up. Your stomach gets like not the good butterflies, and a lot of times I'll get, like, have you ever been in a fight
Yeah.
as a kid? You get that whistle, that kind of hum in your ears, like something's getting ready to go down, and that's that old mitochondrial DNA of back in your great zillion grandmother or grandfather on the plains of the Serengeti going, there are lions around. We best be careful.
Oh, definitely. And I used to get that when I was in the prison system more. Now I do interviews that are more circumscribed to I get to be in rooms that are, outside of the main prison buildings often. So it's not quite the same. But when I worked in San Quentin, for example, oh yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. I think that when you're prey more often than your predator, like when you're in prison. I mean, I'm talking pretty much everybody in prison feels like prey, right? I think you develop that sense even more. I mean, everybody around me also knew when something was going to go down. That was very common, where you just felt it in the air. There's an electricity in the air that something's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon.
Well, I'll tell you on at least this
The air
point.
changes.
No, 100% the air changes, and I think that's a combination of the pheromones and different, you know, markers that you give off that fear. Like they say, I can smell the stink of fear on you. People admit a sort of a souring sweat when they're really terrified.
Yep.
That's just a fact.
Yep.
And no, all I was saying was just, like if you have a maximum security prison like I worked at, if no one's coming to the kitchen, if everybody's getting a lot of commissary and standing there in their cells, best get ready because it's getting ready to blow up.
Yeah, I always said that in the what is it in the chow hall? If the guys all get coffee but nobody's drinking it, watch it. Get down.
Yeah,
Because it means they're using their coffee as a reflection that they can see behind them. And the first thing they drink is their coffee. It's the only drug that they can legally get. So if they get their black coffee and they're not drinking it, that something bad is going to happen. I remember the last ride at San Quentin before I left. What was it? The non-lethal weapons started going off and guys finally got down. And when everybody was dismissed from Chow Hall, there were at least 39 weapons that hit the floor. So, and that was common, and I was one of the first women that started working there that was working condemned row anyway. There wasn't another one. So it was a different experience. That was kind of how I started my career. And it took me a while to sort of get it down, I guess.
It's a complete rewire. Especially, I'm not sure how old you were when you went in. I was about 25, 26. I mean, I'd been around, been in a few scraps. I'm definitely not
I was similar. Same.
You know what I'm saying? And I treated it very much like a sociological type of situation. I was lucky enough to do a little bit of research while I was in there, and on the paranormal kind of end of things as well, because I do research. But more often than not, it was it's funny, you can set a guy who's been, or a lady who's say 20, 25 years, 30 years in what I call old school guards. Okay, it's right next to a person who's done time that long in plain street clothing. Their mannerisms, the way they watch, the way they'll cock their head or not cock their head, the way they enter a room. It's earmarked all the same. You really can't tell the difference. And in the end, a lot of times old guards relate with old inmates. I'm not talking about the most worst. Some guys are in there for a bar fight that
like
went
the porters,
wrong.
the guys that
Right.
No, the guys that are like programming. No, I joke about this, and it's not a very flattering idea of me, but it's true. Sometimes if I get tired, I still eat like I'm in prison, meaning that my forearms are on either side of the plate, kind of guarding the plate.
I'm laughing at my brother who, my brother Robert, because especially if you're tired and you're just not 100%. I'm a lefty, so I always keep my right arm, and he's like, man, you can so tell you've worked in the prison system for a long time. And he said, you're almost hugging your plate, man. And I said, well, just when there's a lot of people around. I said, well, yeah. Were they going to take your food? Well, probably not. But you're conditioned. You are programmed.
Of course they're not. Yeah, you see it all the time. And when I was in the prisons, and you can't leave. And that's the other thing. You can't leave to take a lunch break to eat. You can't do that when you work in prison. To get out of the prison, you have to go through all the Sally Port and go down to the car, which is a million miles away. Everybody I knew ate in the prison. So you're eating around inmates, and you start to pick up that behavior. Yeah, I totally get you. I mean, most of the officers that I know that are old timers, there's no way you can tell them apart from a seasoned but programming inmate. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Well, can I
It's
ask you?
kind of intense and kind of
Oh,
funny.
100%.
Yep.
It's very fun. I mean, it's funny in that kind of, isn't it weird that, how easily, because you could take, I've had guys that were college educated guys, or as we'd say in Kentucky, edumacated, an edumacated guy, and you put him in there, and within 6 to 8 months, he's already showing some of those little dog-eared qualities of this and that, and a little bit, sometimes some of the apathy if you're not careful. You get a little bit apathetic,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
it's very easy to do. Let me ask you this, and the reason I ask you is because I had this after I'd left the prison, even before I left the prison. I would, if I was not feeling well, if I maybe didn't get enough sleep, or I'd been maybe sick or whatever, I would have prison nightmares, and I would think that I'm in a riot situation. I'd jump off out of my bed, looking around this and that. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, something, something." She's like, "It's fine. You're home. Go to sleep." It might have been, we live not too far from a train track, and it's sort of similar to that warning air siren that they'll use when someone's going over the wall. And sometimes it
Yep.
hit me. Did you ever find yourself doing that, or finding yourself keeping certain behaviors that you picked up while working in corrections?
Yes, there's two behaviors that I still have and I cannot seem to quite get rid of. One was actually from my time at the state hospital, because in the prison, since I'm a psychologist, I often didn't have to participate in the takedowns. That was, custody officers. So I got, I got out of the habit of that. But at the state hospital, it was this because we didn't have custody on the units. In a hospital for the criminally insane, imagine that. It was a 72-bed unit with guys who were all incompetent to stand trial, and a lot of them not medicated. We had on average 6 takedowns a day. I can put somebody in 5-point in less than a minute and a half. I did 6 takedowns a day, but the sound, the tone, there's a specific tone, like sound. I don't know what key it is, musically. But I was at a Target store, of all places, and they came on the intercom, like the Target intercom, to say something to the employees, and the tone sound was exactly the same. And I like dropped what I was carrying to run to something that clearly was not happening.
Right.
But that was what I did. I dropped what I was carrying. Like something broke on the floor. I dropped it and then prepared to run toward an incident. And I'm like, what is going? And my heart was beating a million miles a minute all of a sudden. And to this day, if I hear that specific tone sound, I still get my heart beating fast.
It's
And so that happens to me, and it'll never stop, probably.
there's something to be said about those such and such or something, and you just know it's almost like if a person has say if they're a firefighter, and they'll have a beep sort of tone go off, but it's not really a tone.
Yep.
It's the cadence of the voice. This is an extremely serious situation. We need you to respond, and it's real dry, clear. Here's the situation. We need officers to respond immediately at dorm 6 or whatever. And yeah, no, it's still there. It's whenever I've went by the prison, and they would have let-ins and let-outs. Because I'd go there because I'd written about the penitentiary, and I'd take pictures for my books and whatnot. And it's the same thing. It's that same pity your stomach type of drop. And my hat's off to the guys and ladies that work there. I think maybe my, how do I put this? My sensibilities were just kind of different. I'm a musician by trade. I'm a radio guy by trade, an artist by trade. And I don't want to sound, ooh, I'm an artist, but you know what I mean. I was not the honky tonk roughneck, spit and chaw, ain't this fun, go mudding on the weekend kind of guy. And it seems like a lot of times those guys do okay, or ex-military. Ex-military are already been broke down, and I never had that. So I was more like a regular guy walking around going, what the hell's going on in this place? So if it helped me keep a little bit of my humanity, I'm thankful for that. But so let's wrap a little bit more about what you do, because you were talking about when you're in the state hospitals and dealing with these unmedicated, which sounds wacky, insane type of guys. We had the Western Lunatic Asylum, or sorry, Western State Hospital. It was originally called the Western Lunatic Asylum, and we had it was a sister facility, and when we had a guy who slipped a writing pen from somebody or a staple and tried to swallow it, take their eyelids off. My first weekend, there was a guy who got a staple, and basically sawed his unit off. And we're rushing him down there to the thing. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody eat a bunch of pins in their neck.
You can bleed out real fast with that if he doesn't. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I remember having to hold a towel over this guy's junk that was like just, spitting out the side. And so we're down there. I'm standing there, arms covered with blood up to my elbows, just where you're trying to put pressure down on this guy as they're pushing him on a gurney and walk. And they're like, "Hey, welcome to KSP, Asher." Was there a moment like that you had that left an indelible stain, pardon the pun, on you?
Oh man. It's funny too, because I wish that there is one particular moment that I'll always remember, but just for like point of reference, when I worked at the state hospital with 6 takedowns a day, we always had the Hep C protocol that if you were exposed to blood, right, you had to get tested, and you had to get tested for 6 months after you were exposed to blood that may be Hep C positive. The entire time I worked at the state hospital, I was exposed to blood so often, I never got out of the Hep C protocol.
Like you pretty much had a bed there,
Yeah, I mean, they would just clear me, and then there'd be another incident. So, but there was one incident that I remember particularly because it was so out of the blue. There was a new guy coming to get his meds at the nurse's station window, a small guy too. So a guy that you're not expecting a lot of violence out of, to be honest, because he's little, smaller than me, 5'4", little guy. And he was standing behind this big kind of oaf guy that was known to be violent, right? So we're thinking nothing's going to happen from the little guy. But the little guy was hearing voices, you could tell, right? He's responding to things, trying not to, but he's responding to things that only he can hear.
Trying to be low key, but you could tell he wasn't holding it together.
Yeah, he was trying to be cash about it, but he came up to get his meds. Yeah, and he's clearly starting to get worked up with the voice. And all of a sudden, he turns around and he jumps like a spider monkey, just jumps up on the oaf kind of guy behind him, who was very well loved on the unit, I should say. He was medicated well, doing well. And he beat him so badly, so quickly, that he broke his nose and caused an orbital fracture and a jaw fracture in less than a minute.
Damn, son.
And yeah, it was unbelievably violent. And it was so quick. And the big guy went down on the floor, and the blood was incredible. It was just gushing out of his face everywhere. And the reason that I'll always remember it is because I can't say his first name. I almost did. I liked this kid, the one that was on the floor, the one that was hurt. But we knew that he'd be violent, really violent, when he feels threatened, or if he's been hurt, he would get up and just wreak havoc, right? And so at that moment, I decided that I had a good relationship with him. He needed me to be talking to him. But in order to do that, we didn't want him to get up and spray blood everywhere. We wanted him to stay down until we could get the Stokes lighter. And I didn't want him to stand up because I was worried he might be violent back. And so I made the decision to get down on the floor with him and look him in the face and talk to him really quiet.
Ballsy.
It's going to be okay. It's going to be. And I was laying down in a pool of blood that I didn't even really realize was there, that was spreading. And by the time we both got up off the floor, he did not get violent. I was so proud of him. I really was. But by the time I got up off the floor, there was blood from my belt buckle up to my chin.
Yeah. And
my entire shirt red.
That, like, hashtag corrections things. And that's very true of that. I've been very lucky. Like I said, in the 10 plus years I worked, no hand was placed upon me in any sort of violent thing. I was spit on one time, but that's because the lieutenant that was walking past a crack in the gate was faster than I was, and I got it on my shirt.
Aiming for him.
Oh, and
I've been there too.
Oh, they begged me. Oh God, Asher, man.
They're like, I'm so sorry.
That's what. And I was like, I'm looking at them, and it was kind of half belief, and then they could see my cheeks flush up, like, what the? And they're going, whoa, Asher, man, I swear to God, it was not meant for you. It was meant for that blankety blank. And I said,
right.
And so I'm like going, I'm fixing to spit on both of y'all. And then he kind of says, man, for real, Asher, I'm sorry. And then like after that, for like a month, a guy, every time he come past me, hey man, I'm sorry. I'm like, at the end of it, like, I get it, man, I'm fine. And if it got me in the eye or something, you gave me hep or something, we would have a major
Then
problem.
it's a different story, but yeah. I got a guy dropped, it was a guy that used to make fun of me coming onto actually death row. Because at the time I was younger, I was 26, something like that. And the stab proof vests never fit me because they only had male vests at the time. So it looked like I was wearing like a dress, right? This big bell of a stab proof vest. And I was very skinny at the time, just this little thing. And this guy always used to scream at me, eat a cheeseburger, like from the fourth tier, like thinking I had an eating disorder or something. Believe me, I did not. I eat well. But he was like, eat a cheeseburger. And then one day he somehow got like a piece of Kraft sliced cheese, the stuff
God.
that's in it. And
Yeah.
he dropped it. He dropped it from the fourth tier and it landed in front of me. I was like, well played, sir.
Oh, God.
Like, I couldn't even be mad. I was like, man, think of how long he had to wait to get that cheese.
And time it. I wonder how many people he practices. Maybe drop somebody about the same weight. No, these. Yeah,
to get it
no.
all the way through the grates, I was like, man, I'm impressed. I don't know what to say.
No, that's the thing. And people, there's moments of extreme, dire darkness, taking people off where they've hung themselves and whatever. Somebody's left somebody bloody on the weight yard or whatever. But then there's also that really jacked up gallows humor. Police, military, EMTs, morticians, and whoever. People work at state hospitals, people who deal with any sort of hair-triggered personalities. They can be extremely funny. I've worked with people in different levels of mental disarray, and sometimes they're just so damn funny. And you're just like, man, if you were like this all day and maybe stop stabbing women in the neck with pins, you would be a joy.
I'm only laughing because it's like, I mean, they used to call me when I first started working there, which is so weird because I don't feel like, because of what I talk about, what I do, I don't feel like this myself. But they would call me Dr. Sunshine because I was very smiley and I was laughing a lot because they were genuinely funny. I mean, there were so many jokes going, but I always kept the levity up because when I was talking to a guy, it oftentimes was because he wanted to take his own life. So if you can't joke with guys when you're walking down the tier and make it better for everybody else, then it's just this horrible, oppressive feeling, and nobody wants that. So I joked around constantly, as long as it wasn't at the expense of somebody that was sensitive.
Right, or security protocols or something, of course. No, you have to. That's the thing. I probably should have asked you. Give me a little bit of idea of the family you come from. Were you the youngest, the oldest, the only child? Because I'm asking this because I'm going to explain to you where I come from on that, and I'm curious if it's a similar vibe.
Well, I am. Let's see. I am adopted as well. Actually, I'm adopted by parents who were a bit older than my biological parents would be. So almost a generation older, right? So my parents typically would have been sort of from the hippie generation, but my folks, the ones that raised me, were not. They were from the silent generation. So they were raised by people that grew up during the Great Depression.
Mine too.
Yeah, my dad was born. My adopted dad was born in 1939. So they were very kind of stoic, my dad always had a really dry sense of humor, and I was an only child. I was the only one they adopted, and I think they were pretty dismayed when I went into this field of work at first. But then I reminded my dad, who worked in a steel plant, did some of the steel for the Sears Tower in Chicago, stuff like that. Cool. My dad was one of those people that always hired people coming out of the Milwaukee prisons. He hired ex-cons all the time because, one, he thought they deserved a second chance, and the other was kind of manipulative, but it was because he said, if you want a guy to work on weekends and holidays and be glad for the job and not bitch about it, hire an ex-con. He'll either be the worst guy that's ever worked for you, or he will be the best. And I never forgot that, ever.
No, I was very lucky to have good relationships, professional, obviously, but just very solid relationships. Because around here, I'll tell you about my first day on the yard, and I'm sorry to make this about me, but you'll get an idea.
No, sure.
First day on the penitentiary yard, I come in, went past Love Kills. Love Kills was a older black man who he loved nice cars, nice Merlot or Merlot, however you pronounce it, and smoking crack and killing white women. And so,
Oh my.
well, yeah, he's a triple threat, literally. But the administration, who are all old guards, would say, well, hey, Love Kills, why don't you kind of say hi to the new folks when they come in? And it was a great weeding out tool because he would talk like he was a different character. It was a character he played. And he'd be like, well, look, here comes the new class. This is his voice. And I'm not trying to, he was gravelly. This is not me trying to sound like a black guy, so keep the hate mail away from me. Well, look, we got a new Klansman. How you doing, Mr. Klansman? You know, this and that.
And
And so you saw 3 or 4 of them, their eyes, just the color went out. They went back to the gate. Like on Young Train, said, open this goddamn door right now. And they were gone. Now, because I knew a little bit about this sort of stuff from jails and stuff. And it's like, what's going on, Mr. Klansman? I said, man, I don't know. You know, my wife got mad at me because I cut some more eye holes in her sheets again. And then he laughed. And he knew he could joke with it. He's rolling with it. He didn't call me something ugly. He joked about it. And they knew it was okay. But there were 2 guys up on top of a hill. And I'm walking down to the chow hall. It's been, a long day. Yo, Asher. No, actually, they didn't call me Asher. They said, yo, Steve. I'm still walking. Then I heard, yo, Stevie, man. Everybody knew from childhood knew me as Stevie. I was Stevie Weavy.
Wow.
So, and I went, who the hell knows me in here? And here comes two boys that I went to school with. Oh. And my eyes is like, what? And they're looking at me in the outfit, like, what are you doing here? I was like, well, I'd asked the same, but apparently, I can just look at the records in the office. And they kind of laughed. Said, yeah, it's been an adventure. I said, yeah, I can imagine. And he said, it's great to see you, Asher, or Stevie. I'm glad. Hope your family's doing well. And then I see all the inmates kind of walking past, looking at us. And I said, yeah. And I kind of get a serious face. I said, hey, it's wonderful to see you guys. I'm glad to see you doing well. But one of us is going to get stabbed. So yeah. So I go, man, look, I'll look into about the bad assignment later. You need to talk to the guy. I'm the weekend thing, man. I got time for this stuff. And I walk him down the hall. And we were okay. I would speak to him out of the prison, but I didn't need to get in that situation. And of course, I told my supervisors I had kids from school there. Just you can't help it. It's a small area. But when did the serial killer kind of element come? Like the part of it, was it? I mean, was there something you seen, something you watched, somebody, a certain individual that said, I have to peel this back like an onion and figure out what all's going on with these type of people to help?
No, for me it was not like I wish. I mean, I was always interested in it, but I fell into this profession kind of on accident. And then when I left the state hospital, believe it or not, it was because the state hospital was too dangerous because of all the takedowns, and I knew at some point I was going to get hurt badly, Right. And so I wanted to transfer to the prison because, yes, San Quentin was safer. All right. So I transferred to the prison.
And that's a hell of a statement. I want to go to prison because it's safer than this place. That's whack. Oh, my God.
It totally was, though. Yeah, no, I was like excited because there were going to be custody on the units now. Oh, my gosh, And I was super excited to work there. But when I first got there, I inherited a caseload from a doctor who had just left. And my intent was to work with like the type of guys I've been working with at the state hospital. Though they were mentally ill, they typically had violent crimes, but maybe they murdered one person. You know what I mean? Like, or a sex crime. I dealt with sex crimes before. I was taking over a case, but I had no idea about it. Okay, this will tell the entire audience how dumb I was. I mean, really dumb. I was sitting in an office with this craggly old doctor. I mean, craggly. Okay, he'd worked there forever. And he's like, you're going to be taking over Dr. Johnson's caseload. And how do you feel about working on condemned row? And I'm not kidding. San Quentin's old. It's like 1880s. Okay. And when I go in the winter season, it looks like the walls are crying. It's cold. It's awful. Things are falling apart. And I literally thought that this guy meant a condemned building. And I said to him, well, I mean, I guess if it's safe to go in there.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Because I was that stupid. Yeah.
No, that's
sweet. And he looked
sweet.
At me for a second. and he looked at me for a second, and he's like, what? And then I realized, when he looked up and said, what? And I went, oh, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. And I
Womp
felt like such an idiot. Oh my God. I was blushing so hard. I could feel it in my hairline. I'm like, I'm so stupid. But that was how I got introduced to it. And I was the first woman under the age of 35 to have ever worked on the row. And most of the guys who are on the row have pretty bad murders or serial killing. So that's how it started for me. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, there's killers. That's what people don't understand. Um, you will have no one's in there for anymore for stealing a loaf of bread or some apples or slipping in to catch a late movie or a drive-in or drag racing. It's one of the big boys. It's something that's pretty dark. But there's okay. Oh God, I want to. Okay, I'm going to use an expression. Are you familiar with the old Chappelle show?
Yes, a little bit. I didn't watch it a lot, but yes, I am.
Okay, I will not use the terminology of what Paul Mooney called himself. It was like Nostradamus, but it was an expletive kind of word. But he says Wayne Brady makes Bryant Gumbel look like Malcolm X, and I've used that to explain to people there are degrees.
Yeah.
You are just a tenderfoot. You're over here, you did something, whatever. This guy, he's full on, Eagle Scout. This guy can take it apart, break you down, and take you apart mentally and physically. Yeah. It's a whole new game. And it is a whole
new game. Yeah. Absolutely. There's levels for sure. And these were the baddest of the bad. And what's interesting is that I transferred out of San Quentin after a couple of years there, not because I didn't like it. I did like it, but I promoted. I got a different job where now all we do is evaluate guys like that, but throughout the state. So I'm over a group of people that does that. But beside the point, there are still guys that I talk to every week at San Quentin all the time because I was always on. I mean, I was never in an office. I didn't have an office. I was on the tiers constantly, right? Like doing different things, getting referrals, suicide referrals, danger referral, like all this different stuff. There are guys I realized that I knew and I talked to every day, years after the fact, that I'm like, oh my God. Like there's one guy that I can't say names, which kind of sucks, but
no, I understand HIPAA policies.
One guy that I was watching like a show. It was on in the background. Yeah, horrible serial killer. Horrible serial killer. One of the worst. Yeah. And I'm listening to it, and I was like, well, that's funny. He has the same last name as and then his picture flashed on the screen, and I went, oh, my God.
And there goes the light. There goes the light of going.
I had no idea. He was somebody I dealt with casually. I didn't.
They always told us
where I was like, what? I talked to him every day for like years.
And you know what? It doesn't matter who you work with. People are communal. People are form loose affiliations. Mm-hmm. I don't mean you're bringing them stuff in or taking them stuff out or allowing yourself to be manipulated in a way. But this is your crew. As bad as it is, this is your crew, and this is who you see every day. And that guy's maybe his grandma or somebody to come visit. You're out there. He likes sour Skittles. He don't like the regular ones. Or this guy over here. You learn them, and it's almost like I don't want to say that they're your pets.
Yep.
Because they'll be on you in a minute, but it's a thing of going. I am with these guys almost as much as I am with my own family. I have cousins I haven't seen as much as this, and you are part of their world, and good or bad, that's how it is. I was going to say you had made a mention about the walls would sweat, and what people don't get is when you are in an old institution. Mine was like 1889, I believe. Opened on Christmas Eve, and in hot times it would puddle. Well, I would think when I first come up there, I'm like, come on, guys, man. Pardon my language. Like, did you just piss in the floor, man? Because sometimes people pee in the floor, and they're like, no, man. And like I felt something drip on me. Like, oh, come on, guys. I'm looking around. There's nobody awake. I look up, and the ceiling's dripping like out in a dungeon, especially on the lower sections that's close to the ground, because the penitentiary is right next to the Cumberland River.
Yep.
So it was constant moisture. Summer was oppressive. Right. It's hellish, and people don't get it. And like you said, when you're
and there's and people think AC. No. Yeah, like when you're in there, like at San Quentin too, people are like, oh, it's, right on the bay. Like, like they can look out and see the bay and it's so beautiful. And I'm like, that's what you think it's like in there? Really?
Yeah. Go stand in a bathroom after a shower with like 8 of your closest friends, and then make sure one of them's been outside running for a good 2.5 hours. It hasn't probably bathed in a week.
Yeah.
That's what it smells like. It smells like I'm trying to be nice. It smells like testicles and socks and raiment and Tops tobacco. That's what it smells like. It's not sexy.
Absolutely.
It's not.
And we couldn't do tobacco after a while. I was sad when they got rid of tobacco, not because of the inmates' health. I think it's better for their health, but it did cover some of the smell, and that was nice. The smoking, but
yeah. Well, there were some that would could use. They would take certain things from the yard, and they would make little things. Maybe they put a dandelion in a small bottle in the window, and it would act like a diffuser, and they'd put like a few little seasonings in it, maybe some cloves or something, and it would kind of give it sort of a spice cake meets, spice cake made out of testicles and feet, but at least it was a little bit of a spice cake smell. It's Christmassy, No, seriously, they'll think about it. How many of your guys do you know that would get like maybe an orange and stick some stuff in it, or do like, oh well, this makes me think of home? They're still human beings, but they're just
oh god,
they're freaking
there was
crazy.
full on decorations. There were guys that used to do origami, with little scraps of paper or even toilet paper, and they would dye it with Kool-Aid, different types of Kool-Aid. And there was one guy that had little origami cranes of like every different color hanging from his ceiling, and it actually was beautiful. It was amazing. And he did all that because he hated how it looked in there.
There was a handful of guys, and I don't want to get, I feel like this is like the prison edition. I apologize. But I don't know how many people actually get into this with you. There were guys who would work for like a cancer ward, and they would put together all this, the floor's made of teak wood and all this type of mahogany stairs, and they would make these beautiful, big, table-wide, like 2 or 3 6-foot table-wide doll houses with murals that were going down from different floors, and looks like flowing water, and beautiful work. And I don't know, maybe if it helped them just focus, maybe try to pay back a little bit some of the stuff they did, or maybe it helped them on their custody score that they're trying to do something a little bit benevolent, but that it was all part of it. But let me ask you this. As I said, we've probably got about 8 minutes left. Like the criminal code and things like this. What's something that you want to do that's coming up next? Or are you working on some stuff as continuation? And also, I'm going to make sure that you mention your website and different things and how people can get a hold of you.
Well, let's see. I've got a textbook coming out this next spring that I wrote with Pete Klismet, who is one of the original FBI profilers. So it's going to be called Profiling Violent Crime, and it's a criminology textbook meant for upper level criminology courses. And we worked on that for a good couple of years together, talking about every different type of criminal you could possibly think of, and all of the research and exactly what makes them tick, why they are. So that's coming out in, I think, the fall of 2020. And obviously, if you want to get a hold of me, you can go to thecriminalcode.com. Just shoot me an email and I will answer it.
Far out. Well,
so that's my biggest project coming up.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's what people don't realize is when you're writing, the best sort of apt expression or explanation, or what do you want to call it? I'm bad with those things, similes or whatever. It's like you're making sausage. You've got the tubing, and if you don't keep putting meat into the grinder, like I'm writing stuff out into 2021 at this point. So I'm looking at the long game, and you've always got to keep. I'm that type of personality. Yeah. I got to keep 5 or 6 things going on, plus a radio show, plus this and that, because I'm squirrely like that. I have a weird squirrely energy like that, and it's helped me in a creative process. I don't want to say it. It's good to try to be a manic person, but if you have that, I'm sure you've caught yourself there, going, "Oh, this is nice. I got a cup of coffee. I'm kicked back. Damn, I really should be writing on that book. Or you know what? I really should get back with such and such about that interview. Or, maybe I could find it. What was the case file? It's right in the back of my head, and it's dogged, and it drives you. Who is a person, throughout history that you would have liked to have interviewed, profiled, maybe for the fact of they were such a unique character, or maybe they were a precursor, or sort of like the patient zero for which I don't know if there actually was a patient zero for serial killing. I think it's as old as time. But what was a character from history, or even now, that you would love to, kind of open your head up and look inside?
Oh man, I mean, there's a few that were, kind of ingenious in their own way, and there are very few of them. People always think that serial killers are so diabolical, and a lot of them, they just choose victims that aren't missed, so they're not that crafty, they're not that clever. So somebody like an H. Holmes, who was like the granddaddy of clever. Like created a murder castle, for God's sake. Like he planned for years in advance to build a hotel in Chicago that was meant for killing because he knew the Chicago World's Fair was coming. Like, talk about planning and patience, man. I would love to have talked to him. I would love to have talked to Ted Bundy just because he also had a great deal of planning. But not because I wanted to dissect why they did it. I've been doing it so long and I've talked to so many, to be blunt, serial killers at this point. I think I know why they do it. I'm not really that interested in that. I'm more interested in the other stuff. Like Ted Bundy had a legitimate relationship with a woman. What? Talk to me about this. You know, like, because psychopaths don't form attachments very easily. I want to know why he did.
Well, it seems too like with Ted, in the situation with his mom, and his mom kind of more or less prostituted and kind of pushed him out, but the thing is, and I say this tongue in cheek, he was a people person. I mean, in regards of he worked was it like a suicide hotline or something? People that were at risk.
And he was good at it.
And he was great. Imagine if he went ahead and actually had become a lawyer or something like that. It would have been a whole different game. There might be a library named after him today. And talking about H. Holmes. Yeah. He knew real estate. He knew a prime area to do this and that. He researched it and the ground that was under it, and how deep he could dig down and whatnot. And he maximized his returns. I mean, it's genius in the most effed up way possible, but you have to kind of tip your hat to their ingenuity and really using everything up from like they have an expression here, like there's a lot of hog farming, use everything from snout to tail, and that's true. And it's almost like they looked at it in a very methodical, cool, antiseptic kind of way, except for maybe in that flash of heat of rage.
Right, and that's what kind of undid both of them, right? The narcissism and the rage is what, that the hubris that they could get away with anything eventually, and they shouldn't have. They should have stopped at a certain point and probably never would have been caught. So it's like they still fit the mold of the typical serial killer, which is their own ego sort of gets them into it. I would have liked to have met Ed Gein as well, because I've known for many years that, one, he's not really a serial killer. The true definition is 3 people, or it was 3 people at one point. It was only 2 for him, and he was mentally ill, schizophrenic. I would like to have talked to him as a patient, because he is not what people think he is at all. At all. Every portrayal of Ed Gein is wrong from top to bottom, and it's very upsetting for me.
Well, it seems like
because he wasn't that.
Well, I think you know how it is. Anytime, be it in war, good God, man! If you think about like the extremely, when I'm saying it's sort of racist in a way, because it's their own sort of classification, like the World War II stuff with all the Japanese stuff and the big glass and the buck teeth. Come on, you demonize and humanize something so you can kind of go, oh, we ain't that. We might be we might have some problems, but we ain't that guy. Gein was really weird, and if I'm not mistaken, that was part of what the Psycho character, the character from Psycho, was based on.
I think that's what's upsetting. Like that, both the Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre character, and Psycho were based on Gein, but they were based on a fundamental, complete misunderstanding and bastardization of Gein. So you're really, what's interesting, you're looking at the author's messed up head, not Gein.
It's their damage they put in. Every writer puts a little bit of their self into their story just by nature. It's not a narcissism. Sure. Well, maybe it is. I mean, if we put our books together and go, here, I think this is good enough to charge money, buy it. But or please buy my book. But it's it's your color, it's your perceptions, it's your baggage or your trip or what do you want to call it that you bring to the game. And like you said, sometimes it's grossly misaligned and put out. Would you ever consider maybe putting out your own type of film or whatever? Even better, maybe a pop-up book.
I would. A picture book of
Oh, it'd be so
like
great.
this. For instance, this is why Jack the Ripper was not educated in medicine. Let me show you how he cut up the bodies. Yeah, yes, I would. Because I that also upsets me. No, he wasn't a surgeon. And by the way, you know that there were like butchers on every corner in Victorian England, and most people knew how to break down at least an animal's body, right? It didn't take special skill
Well,
to do that back then. Like
but yeah,
nobody's putting it in the context of history.
well, back then it's like, Jesus Christ. You put, I'm not talking about millennials. I'm talking about people our ages.
Hmm.
You put them out in the woods right now. Go here. You got a flint. You got a knife, and you got this and that. Build a structure. Make a snare for a rabbit, and start a fire. They'll be dead in
No
three
way.
days. If that, if they don't fall off the
No.
side of a damn mountain. Unless you're in either a rural area like I was, and maybe had a dad that showed us a little bit about starting fires and all that kind of stuff. You just do not have those skills because it's not
But they
needed.
did then. Yeah,
Oh
they
yeah,
did then, though. And so
right.
everybody's talking about like how Jack the Ripper must have been educated because of how he missed certain organs like on purpose. And I'm thinking, everybody butchered back then, man. That didn't take special knowledge. That was just
Yeah,
being Victorian.
right.
Period.
You're taking a deer apart. You know not to hit
Yeah,
certain glands,
right.
urinary glands that's down in the legs because your meat's going to smell like pee. Who wants that?
Right. And you're not going to hit the intestines because you don't want it. Like everything is gone
Oh, the
then.
poo
Like
poo.
there's
Right.
Yeah, there's all these things that people knew back then, just as a matter of course, that people that are looking through our lens now don't understand. So, look, oh, he must have been a doctor. I'm like, no, a doctor would have been a lot better, a lot better
And I think
at
a
it.
doctor would have maybe did a house call or had them come to a
Mhm.
little thing to a clinic for people who wouldn't be missed
Yeah,
still, But
yeah,
I'm
he
thinking,
wouldn't have hung out in Whitechapel for goodness sake. Yeah, it makes no sense. It just
right.
doesn't. He because he would have stood out there and people would have known. Like that's a guy from high
Well,
society. What's he doing around us? So it was a guy that nobody thought stood out, which means
right.
he was from that area.
Well,
And they
think
always kill in their own territory anyway. So
moreover than that, what it seems like is look at say like Countess Bathory and people like that,
Mhm.
or if you take fictionalized characters like Lestat, yes,
Mhm.
he would catch this one and go, but he loved to feed on the affluent. He loved feeding on the rich because their health is better, and if you
Yeah.
actually are eating or doing something like that, you're going to get a better quality cut of meat. I hate to sound like Albert Fish, which is a whole nother show we could talk about,
Oh yes. Oh, the
but
peakerism. Yes.
yes, yes. But is there anything you want to say? We're right at the end of it. Is there anything you want to say before I get into my outro and get back with you after the end of the show? Is there any words of wisdom, parting knowledge that you want to leave to the fine listeners of the House of Asher?
Oddly, yes, I do want to leave one little thing that is statistically probable. I like to, or if anybody, I know this is grim. If anybody ever walks up to you with a gun and tells you to get in your car and drive, don't ever get in the car. If you get in the car, you have an 80% chance of dying. But if you run right then, he has less than a 20% chance of hitting you at all and less than a 7% chance of hitting any vital organ. So if anybody tries to jack you with your car and a gun, run. They don't want to shoot the gun because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. Do not get in the car.
But do you still suggest zigzagging as you run? Is that an actual
No,
viable thing?
no,
I just
no. Just run. Just run full out. A trained cop, I hate to say it, a trained cop has less than a 25% chance of hitting a vital organ. So you're pretty good with a criminal. Just
right.
go.
Yeah, right.
Get
I
out
mean,
of there.
unless you get some sort of who was the killer that was like a sniper? I forgot his name. I think it was him and his son. Was it? I
Oh,
have
God, the Beltway sniper. Yeah, no, they knew what they were doing.
Beltways. Yeah, no, yeah. If you got those guys, but they're not going to come down and ask you for your ride.
Yep,
Yeah. So,
exactly. They're
um,
far away. So that's it. It just, I see crimes like that all the time and people get in the car and I'm always like, no. Worst decision.
all right. Well, Clarissa, we're at that point, and what
Never
I'm
the
going to do
victim's
is
fault, but you can
no, well, no, of course not. But you can make yourself less of one. You can make yourself a
Yep,
you know what I'm
exactly.
saying? All prey adopt protective mechanisms except for humans, and we have to develop those things.
Yep,
We're all
exactly.
part of a great big ecosystem, and we're not always on the top of the chain. That's just the nature of it. But Miss Cole, I appreciate it, and if you'll stick around long enough for me to do this outro, I will talk to you on the other side of this.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I've learned some stuff today, and I like that. Make sure to check out Trouble Will Cause, and also the Criminal Code. That's really cool. I had no idea I would have such a similar kind of background with this person, but I'm really pleasantly surprised. But I want you guys to make sure to go out there and enjoy the rest of the day. But as the sun sets behind the pines and the shadows grow long, make sure to check under your bed, in your closet, down your back hallway. Who knows, there might be a Gainish type fella, maybe a guy with a bad arm which will help you put a couch in the back of the car. Don't do it. Better get on out of there. But there is learning in fear and life lessons there. But I want you guys to enjoy the rest of your day. I love you all. And until next time, stay scared.